దూర విద్యా విధానంలో డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ ఓపెన్ యూనివర్సిటీ దేశంలోనే మొట్టమొదటి సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం. దాదాపు 2.5 దశాబ్దాలుగా దూర విద్యా విధానం ద్వారా కంప్యూటర్ కోర్సును అనుసంధానం చేస్తూ BA, BCom, BSc డిగ్రీ కోర్సులను అందిస్తోంది. పోస్ట్ గ్రాడ్యుయేషన్ స్థాయి, డిగ్రీ, డిప్లొమా స్థాయి కోర్సులను ఔత్సాహికులైన విద్యార్థులకు అందిస్తోంది. డాక్టర్ బిఆర్ అంబేద్కర్ సార్వత్రిక విశ్వవిద్యాలయం స్థానికంగా స్వయం బోధన పద్ధతిలో ముద్రణ రూపంలో రూపొందించిన కోర్స్ మెటీరియల్ అందిస్తోంది. కోర్స్ మెటీరియల్ అధ్యయనానికి సహకరించే విధంగా రేడియో, టెలివిజన్ పాఠ్యాంశాల ఆధారంగా కార్యక్రమాలు ప్రసారం చేస్తోంది. అధ్యయన కేంద్రాల ద్వారా ఏర్పాటు చేసే సలహా సంసర్గ తరగతులు, సైన్స్ ప్రాక్టికల్ సౌకర్యాలు విద్యార్థులకు స్వయం అధ్యయనానికి ఒక చక్కటి అవకాశం. ఇవి విద్యార్థి సమీపంలో ఉండే అధ్యయన కేంద్రం నుంచే పొందొచ్చు.
Dear students, welcome to this discussion on the topic performance and remedies for breach of contract. Every contract creates certain obligations. These obligations have to be met by the parties entering into the contract. The meeting of these obligations is known as performance. When the obligations are not met, it is called as breach. When there is a breach of contract, the courts come into picture and give respite to the party who has been wronged or who has been put to loss on account of this breach. To give us further insight into this topic on performance and remedies for breach of contract, we have with us today two eminent experts from the field, Mrs. Sushila, Senior Faculty Member, Aurora's Degree College, and Sri Srinivas Rao Ala, Director, Sri Harita Institute of Professional Studies. Hello. Students, this is a live teleconference and we would like you to call us and ask your doubts, but please keep your questions pertinent to the topic being discussed today. I'll give you the phone numbers on which you have to call us: 040 2703 1431, 2703 1432 and 2703 1433. Kindly follow the discussion for the first half an hour and ask questions which are helpful to you and to the other viewers viewing this program. Now we will begin the discussion with asking Sushila madam, please tell our students what to expect from this discussion, and at the end of the program how they would be benefited out of this discussion.
The topic that is being discussed today is performance and breach of a contract. Performance of a contract is very crucial for a student to understand, because basically it leads to the litigation. Non-performance of a contract leads to a litigation. In business law parlance, we call non-performance of a contract as breach of a contract. Therefore, it becomes very vital for the student to know the difference as to when the breach has occurred and when breach has not occurred, and in case there is a breach which has happened, what will be the various legal remedies available for the parties to the contract to take the contract forward.
Okay, so that is what the students will expect at the end of the discussion. They would know what is performance, and when the performance doesn't happen, it is called as breach, and they would also know what will happen in case there is a breach of contract. Now we will ask Srinivas sir to tell us first positively about performance. What is performance?
Good afternoon, students. Before we go for performance of a contract, let us recapture what is contract. According to section 2 subsection H, contract is defined as an agreement enforceable before the law. As already you have learned, what are the essentials of the valid contract according to section 10, like offer and acceptance, intention to create a legal relationship, consideration, capacity to contract, free consent, lawful objective, then certainty and possibility of the performance, agreements not declared as void, writing and registration. As we know, a contract always creates a legal obligation. Obligation means duty to be performed by both the parties. Performance is nothing but both the parties in a contract has done their obligations. Under section 37 of the Contract Act, performance of a contract is nothing but when both the parties have performed their obligation or offer to perform their obligation as per the Contract Act or under any relevant law is nothing but a performance. So, contract creates certain obligations when both the parties are offered to perform their obligation or both the parties have performed their obligation. That is called the contract is come to an end between both the parties by performance.
Okay. So, Srinivas sir has adequately given us a lead into the topic. First, he has discussed what is a contract and what is a valid contract under section 10 of the Indian Contract Act, and he also mentioned about what is performance. Sushila madam, are there any different types of performances?
Yes, section 37 infers two types of performances. One is known as the actual performance, the second one is referred to as the attempted performance, or we also call it as tender. Coming to the first one, which is actual performance, when parties promise certain promises into the contract, actual performance involves both the parties perform whatever they have promised into the contract, and on complete fulfillment of the contract and there is no more else to be done as far as the contract is considered, it is known as actual performance. For example, A owes 10,000 rupees to B, and when A on time on the specified date repays that amount to B and B accepts the money from A, the promises are kept up between both the parties, and that is mentioned as actual performance. The second type of performance vis-a-vis the actual performance is known as attempted performance or tender. Now, in attempted performance, one of the parties to the party has promised the contract will try to attempt the performance, whereas the promisee will not receive the performance or not in a stage to receive the performance from the promisor. So, in such case, we call it as attempted performance because the party has attempted to perform the contract. So, from his side all his performance is done, whereas the other party has prevented him. Coming to the rights offered, the person who has promised to perform is obstructed from performing, his rights will remain intact with him, and as far as he is considered, tender is considered as actual performance. So, the legal rights are equals to that of the actual performance.
Okay. So, we have learned that there are two types of performances, actual performance and attempted performance, where actual performance has discharged the contract that the parties have done what they have contracted to do. So, this is called as an actual performance, while attempted performance is that performance where one of the party has performed his obligation, but the other party has restrained him from performing his obligation. Now, we will ask Srinivas sir to tell us something about this attempted performance. Is it valid?
So, according to attempted performance point of view, in nutshell we can say, in a contract, offerer offer to perform his obligation, whereas offeree not in a position to accept the performance of offerer, means offerer is ready to do his obligation. On the other hand, offeree not in a position to accept, in simple, offeree not in a position to perform his obligation. This is called attempted performance or tender. This is also valid type of the performance, but what are the rules for valid tender or attempted performance? In case of attempted performance, it must be unconditional, means there are no conditions to be complied with. X says to Y, I will give you rupees 10,000. On maturity, the other party has to pay principal amount plus interest. If he say, I will pay only principal amount, nothing is mentioned there, I will pay rupees 10,000. Interest is not mentioned, this is called conditional. Any tender, any attempted performance should be unconditional. In relation to attempted performance, place, time has to be specified as per the terms of agreement. In agreement, If a place is mentioned, place of the performance, accordingly they need to perform. Time is given, follow the time. And before the business hours, after the stipulated time, or before the lapse of the time, you need to perform. Before the business hours, if you perform, it is not a valid tender. And after the lapse of stipulated time, if you perform, contract is automatically lapsed. Hence, when there is a time and the place is mentioned, follow it. Otherwise, unless otherwise specified, contract need to be performed within the business hours only. Contrary intentions are there between both offerer, offeree. At 1 AM goods must be delivered. 4 AM goods should be delivered. Contrary intentions are there. If the both the parties expressly agreed, and accordingly they can follow. Otherwise, they have to perform the contract during the business hours only. In agreement only expressly we will specify the place, time for performance of a contract. And performance, there is attempted performance should be in totality. It must not perform in bits and pieces. Like a piecemeal distribution is there. Like that, partly I will give the goods today, partly payment I will pay today is not a valid tender. X agrees with Y, I will supply 10,000 quintals of the paddy on 31st May. If he offers on that day, I will supply only say 5 tons. This 5 quintals rather. This is called part performance. This is not a valid tender. And per tender must be given to offeree only, but not to other persons. At the same time, joint promises are there. As a promiser, I need not perform to all the joint promises. If I am performing to one of the joint promisee, as if I am performing to all the joint promises there, I need not perform to each and every one. On the other hand, it should be paid in legal tender. Legal tender means money which is in circulation. It should be offered to pay money which is in circulation, which is valid, not out of circulation as such. Second thing, it should be paid in Indian currency only, but not in foreign currency or a foreign check. Then this attempted performance, otherwise the tender is valid. Otherwise, invalid attempted performance.
Okay. So, dear students, please take note of it. Attempted performance must be unconditional. It must be at the time and place specified. If there is no time and place specified, then it should be within the usual business hours, within the usual time, which is time which is rational. And then it should be performed in totality, not in part, and this performance should be offered to the offeree himself. Now, Sushila ma'am, we have seen that there is something called as a stranger to a contract. Like there are two parties, party A and party B, they enter into a contract. Now, who can demand this performance? Is it only the parties or somebody else also can demand?
A valid demand actually can be made by, there are 3 types of demands which can be made. The first one we call it as the promisee himself. It is a natural course. The promisee is a party to the contract, so he will have a right to demand performance in a contract. For example, A promises to pay 5,000 rupees to C. Now, the person who can demand the money 5,000 rupees from A shall be B and not C, because the parties to the contract are A and B. C is a stranger to the contract. So, this is the natural course, which is the promisee himself. The second type will be legal representatives. Now, who are these legal representatives? In case of death of a promisee, the legal representatives will have a right to demand performance, but the thing that has to be kept in mind is that it should not be a personal service. If it's a personal, if the nature is personal in nature, such contract cannot be performed. Now, for example, A agrees to promise to marry B. Now, when he promises to marry B, and unfortunately if B is dead, can the legal representatives ask or demand for performance? The answer is no, because it's personal in nature. So, other than this exception, legal representatives will have a right to demand performance of a contract. The third thing comes under third parties, what you are mentioning just now, a stranger to a contract. Now, sometimes third parties also will get a right into the contract and demand performance, but this is these are exceptions to the normal case. So, these are discussed under a separate topic as such, known as stranger to a contract.
Srinivas sir, now when madam was talking about performance, she was talking about something called as joint promises. Can you please tell us about this joint promises?
For example, more than 2 or 3 persons involved, we can call it as a joint promise. I take a little simple example. A, B, C together approached X, give a loan of rupees 30,000. X said, yeah, yes. Here the promise between X and A, B, C is nothing but a joint promise. Remember, dear students, in case of a joint promises, among the joint promises, there is a equal benefit and equal burden. What does it mean? When they have borrowed the loan, they have to divide the amount equally. On maturity, they have to pay the amount equally, unless otherwise they have agreed. If any contrary intentions are shown, accordingly that amount will be divided among the 3 joint promises. Among the joint promises, there is equal benefit and equal burden. Burden means on maturity, 3 of them has to pay equally. And the second important point is, one of the joint promisee may be compelled to pay total amount by the joint promisor, and he has to pay. One of the joint promisor was forced to pay the total amount. He has to pay. Later, he can claim the same amount from the other joint promisors. For example, here X may call up A and say, you have to pay total 30,000, and A has to pay. Later, A can claim contribution from B and C. Their shares are respectively 10,000, 10,000. So, remember, dear students, the one of the joint promisee may be compelled to pay total amount. Answer is yes. And one of the joint promisee may be released or discharged from their obligation. The joint promisee may call the joint promisor A, B, C. 3 are the joint promisors. X may call up A, saying that you need not pay the money. Means here A alone is discharged from his obligation, but not B and C in India. Whereas in England, release of one joint promisee will automatically releases other joint promisees. These students make a point. In India, release of one joint promisee will not release other joint promisees, whereas in England, release of one joint promisee will automatically releases other joint promisees also. And if any one of the joint promisee declared as insolvent, if any loss occur, that loss will be divided between the other joint promisors according to agreed ratio or equally. That loss has to be borne by other joint promisors. In case of death of any one of the joint promisor, then the legal representatives of the joint promisor, that is deceased joint promisor, and surviving joint promisors are liable to joint promisee. On the other hand, if the 2 joint promisors die, then legal representatives of the deceased joint promisor and the surviving joint promisor is going to be liable. And finally, in case of death of all the joint promisors, the legal representatives, legal heads of all the joint promisors are personally, severally liable. As per Indian Successions Act, when I am accepting the parental property, I have to accept the parental liability. Hence, among the joint promisors, there is equal benefit and equal burden. Yes.
Thank you, Srinivasa. That was a very beautiful explanation given by you with regard to joint promises. Dear students, remember, the person who makes the promise is called as the promisor. The person to whom the promise is given is called as the promisee. So, just in case you were wondering who is a promisor and promisee, I am just telling this for your information. Sushila madam, when we were talking about attempted performance, we talked about the time and the place of the performance. Can you please tell us the something about this time, place and manner of performance?
Certainly. This time and place and the manner in which performance has to be performed is covered from section 46 to 50 of the Act. Now, when things are clearly specified as per the terms of the contract, there is no ambiguity between the parties. But whenever there is certain kind of ambiguity, for example, performance of a promise where time is specified in the contract. Let us try to understand this concept first. When time is specified in the contract, the performance or the party who has to perform the contract will perform it at the specified time and place for converting it into an actual performance. This is the performance of the promise when time is specified in the contract and where no application is to be made by the promisee. The second type is where the time is not specified in the contract nor any application is required from the promisee. In such case, when time is not specified, it is to be understood as usual business working hours and the time is understood as reasonable time. Now, let us try to understand these two terms, what is reasonable time and what are usual business working hours. As per the norms of the trade, we have what is known as customary usual business working hours for every kind of a business activity. Reasonable time is understood from the facts of the case. So, considering these two aspects, the performance need to be offered. Then third one is performance where application is to be made by the promisee. In such case, the promisor need not perform the promise or rather wait until the application is made by the promisee. Once the application is made, his performance part would start. Okay. The fourth aspect would be where time is specified, time is not specified and not application also is not made by the promisee. In such case, the performance has to be done. Now, does it give him a right not to perform because time is not mentioned or application is not made? The answer is no. He still has to perform his part of the promise. In such case, he will apply the principle of reasonable time, usual business working hours, and he shall apply to the promisee as to the place of performance of a contract. He shall apply it for the place of the contract, and at such time and place, based on the application, the performance shall be performed. Okay. The last variety is the normal usual variety, where as per the sanction of the promisee, the time is specified, the application is already made by the promisee, all the promisor has to do is perform according to the sanction time and place mentioned in the contract. So, these are different ways in which the performance can be offered.
Okay. Okay. So, when a particular time is mentioned, within that time performance has to be attempted or made by the party who has promised the performance, and where no such time is mentioned, then it will be the usual time or the time that appears to be logical and not illogical. Yeah. Is the whole crux of the matter. Now,
can I give an example for time?
Yeah, please, sir.
For example, you received a hall ticket for examination. Place of exam, time of exam, mode of exam, who may give, all these things were categorically specified expressly. You can follow it.
Okay.
It is not there as per business hours.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Okay. So, that is Srinivas sir has explained to you in the language in which you understand. When your hall ticket is given and the particular time and place is mentioned, you have to be present at that particular time and place. Where no such time is mentioned, then it will be the usual time, is what sir was trying to tell you all. Now, we will ask Srinivas sir about something called as reciprocal promises. There are certain promises which are reciprocal. So, something about this reciprocal promise.
The reciprocal promises meaning is both the parties in a contract should stand to either gain or loss, both offerer and offeree. For example, I go to a nearby shop, buy a mobile. One hand I am giving the cash, other hand I got a mobile. What is my gain? Mobile. What is my loss? Money. Other person, gain is mobile, money, and the loss is mobile. So, both the parties should stand to either gain or loss. The reciprocal promises are three types: mutual and concurrent. What is concurrent? Simultaneously, at the same time. Both the parties need to perform their obligations at the same time. Offerer is offered to perform his obligation. If offeree is not ready to perform his obligation, offerer is not under obligation to perform his obligation. In simple term, best example is cash sales. Mutual means both the parties. Concurrent means at the same time, should stand to either gain or loss. One hand I pay the money, other hand he delivered the goods. Both the parties have performed their obligations. This is called mutual and concurrent. Second one is mutual and dependent. One person performance is dependent on other person's performance. Prior to your performance, I need not perform my obligation. First, you need to perform your obligation, then I need to perform my obligation. The term itself is self-explanatory, mutual and dependent. One person performance is dependent on the other person's performance. If other person failed to perform the contract, it is a breach of contract. I can file a case for the remedies under the breach. For example, X agrees with Y. You construct a house for me. I will pay construction charges rupees 10 lakhs and I only will supply required material like sand, iron, steel, cement, bricks and interiors and all. When contractor has to construct a house here, if X supply the inputs, here contractor's performance is based on the owner of the house performance. So, unless you supply the material, he need not go for construction. In simple, I will pay rupees 10,000 if you are topper of this semester. When should I pay money? If you are the topper for this semester. My performance is based on your performance. Unless you perform, I need not pay the money. And lastly, mutual and independent. The term itself is self-explanatory. Mutual, both need to perform, but independent, but not dependent. Each person to the agreement need to perform their obligations as per the terms and conditions. Let us say X agrees with Y. I will supply the 100 bags of rice as on before 10th June 2017. Y said, I will make the payment as on before 5th June. On 5th June, whether Y has paid the money or not, X can give the delivery of the goods on 10th. Because both need to perform two independent acts. It was not dependent. For example, if X says to Y, you pay money on 5th, I can give the delivery of the goods on 10th. It become mutual and dependent. On the other hand, this is independent. What X said, I give the goods on 10th. Other person said, I will make the payment on 5th. On 5th, whether you have paid or not, I can give the delivery of goods. In case of non-payment, I can proceed legally and it comes under breach of contract, I will succeed. So, there are three methods for the reciprocal promises. One is a mutual and concurrent, mutual and dependent, mutual and independent. These are about reciprocal, promises between the both the parties.
Okay. So, students, reciprocal promises, as you already have understood, are promises where one party makes a promise and in return the other party promises to do something. This is called as a reciprocal promise. And these reciprocal promises are of three types. One is mutual and concurrent, where the performance goes hand in hand. You do something, simultaneously I will do something else for you. This is a reciprocal promise which is mutual and concurrent. Then mutual and dependent is where one party performs his obligation provided the other party has done something. So, this performance depends upon your performance. This is mutual and dependent. Mutual and independent is that kind of a reciprocal promise where whether the other party performs his obligation or not, you are required to perform your part of the obligation and the other party also is required to perform his part of the obligation without depending on your own obligation. These are the three types of reciprocal promises. Now, this is very important from you from your examination point of view. Now, Sushila madam, please tell us something about the assignment of contract.
Certainly. Assignment, basically the term means transfer of a right or a title to the other party. Now, how can assignment be done in contracts? Can assignment be done in the contract? Assignments can be done in contracts. There are two types of assignments basically. One we call it as assignment by the act of the parties and the second one is by act of law, operation of law. Now, the first one, when we are talking about assignment between the parties, it happens mutually. Both the parties accept that certain things are to be transferred to the other person. Mutually it happens. So, there is no hassle as such in this type of assignment, which is assignment by act of the parties. Whereas, the second type of an assignment that we have just mentioned is assignment by operation of law. Now, when we use the word operation of law, we will have to cover two important areas here. One is insolvency, the other is death of one of the parties to the contract. Now, on insolvency, the court would assign an official receiver or an assignee to the contract. Now, such people will take charge of the contract. So, it is assigned to the official receiver or the assignee. The second instance we are mentioning is death of one of the parties to the contract. On the death, the legal representatives or the legal heir shall be the people to whom the contracts can be assigned. So, these are the two ways in which assignments can be basically done. Now, coming to the rules regarding assignment of the contracts, students need to understand 2-3 important aspects here, and what are the legal rules framed under the Contract Act as to how assignments can be done. First one, the first important issue the students has to understand is that the obligations under a contract cannot be assigned. Now, what do we mean by obligations of the contract which cannot be assigned? For example, A owes 5,000 rupees to B, and he also has to give 5,000 rupees. He has to recover 5,000 rupees from C. Now, can he set it off? Can he ask B to collect it from C? Now, he is assigning his liability to B, asking B to go and collect it from C. So, this cannot happen, because the rule basically says there is no assignment of any obligation to the other party. The second important principle these students have to understand is that rights and benefits under a contract can be assigned. Now, what do we mean by rights and benefits from the contract to be assigned? For example, A owes B 1,000 rupees, and he may assign this right to C, provided B accepts for it. There is a mutual consent which is required. So, in such case, the right is transferred or the benefit is transferred, and against the benefit such person can probably collect the money. The third important thing is actionable claims. Now, what are examples for actionable claims? One important thing student must understand is actionable claim is an instrument in writing. So, for example, demand draft, promissory notes. Now, these actionable claims can be assigned. These are assignable instruments, they can be assigned. So, these are the 3 important ways in which assignments can be performed.
Okay. So, assignment basically is the transfer of the obligation. Now, here as madam was telling us that the rights arising out of the contract can be assigned, but not the duties arising out of the contract or the obligations arising out of the contract. But here one important thing that I would like to ask Srinivas sir is there a difference between assignment and succession?
Yeah, there is a clear cut difference between assignment and succession. What is assignment? That is as madam rightly mentioned, transfer of the right from one person to other person. In case of assignment, both you are transferring benefit as well as your sometime obligations also. Whereas in case of a succession, when I am accepting the parental property as per Indian Successions Act, he got a parental liability also. So, the basic difference between assignment and succession comes under assignment is only benefits are assigned.
Yeah, okay.
Only benefits are assigned. Simple form of example is X took one insurance policy from LIC of India. Contract is between whom? Policy holder and insurance company. His wife is the nominee. If anything happens to him, only benefits are assigned. She need not pay single installment, single premium. Only benefits are assigned. On the other hand, succession, the both rights as well as obligations both are assigned. Over. When the son is accepting a parental property, he is liable for the parental liabilities also.
Okay.
So, technically we can say both the differences. In fact, looks like both are one and the same.
So, these are the various ways in which a contract is performed, dear students. Now, we will ask Srinivas sir to tell us what are the various ways in which a contract is discharged.
What are the various ways of discharge of contract? 1. By performance of a contract, by mutual agreement, by lapse of time, by operation of law, by impossibility, by breach of contract. There are 6 methods for discharge of a contract. In this, first one is by performance of a contract. That performance is actual performance, attempted performance, which we have already discussed in our discussion.
So, those are the various ways in which a contract is discharged, because there are different methods in which a contract is discharged. What is the meaning of discharge? When the rights and obligations arising out of a contract come to an end, it is called as discharge of a contract. The rights and obligations arising out of a contract, they come to an end. This is called as discharge, and we have also heard from Srinivasa that the various ways in which a contract is discharged. Now, I would like to ask Susila madam to tell us the discharge of contract by performance and by agreement.
Yeah. Discharge of a contract by performance, we have just covered it in the earlier part of the discussion, which covers both actual performance and attempted performance. So, I am not wasting any more further time on that, assuming all of you have understood the concept. The second method of discharge is what we are discussing as discharge by mutual agreement. Now, the word mutual agreement itself indicates that both the parties must mutually accept the whatever changes they are going to make in the contract for it to be discharged. Now, there are several methods of discharge of a contract mutually between the parties. The first one being novation. Now, the word nova indicates new. Now, what is novation? In the case of novation, there is a substitution of the old contract with a new contract. Now, how can this substitution take place and who are the parties concerned? Substitution of the terms of the contract can take place between the old parties, or it can be a new set of people, new parties concerned. This is one aspect of understanding the novation. Another important principle students must understand in context of novation is, for a novation to take place, the old contract must be alive. After termination of the original contract, novation cannot be taking place. So, this is principally what we call as novation, changing or replacing an old contract with a new contract. For example, let us say there is a contract entered into with a timeline of, let us say, 5th of April for payment of certain debt. Now, mutually both the parties can agree, they want extension of time, they may extend this from 5th to 15th, let us say. So, this is by mutual agreement they are extending. So, the original contract which has 5th April as the deadline for payment as per the contract, original contract, is replaced by another contract which has 15th April as the deadline. This is what we refer to as novation. The second method by where mutually parties can discharge the contract is what is known as rescission. Now, in rescission, there is termination of a contract, which means the contract which they have entered into will be terminated between the parties, and as we already mentioned, it has to be done mutually. And in rescission, the original contract will be cancelled and new contract will come into the existence. Now, students may have a doubt now, what is novation and what is rescission? Even in novation, there is a termination of a contract. The fundamental difference between both of these is that in novation, the original contract has to be in existence and then it will be replaced by a new contract, that is novation. Whereas in rescission of a contract, the original contract would have lapsed. So, in its place, the parties are agreeing mutually to enter into a new contract. The third method in which it can be done is what is referred to as alteration. Now, what is alteration? One or more terms of the contract by mutual agreement between the parties can be altered, provided both the parties are agreeable to it. So, that new contract with new terms incorporated shall be the contract which is in existence and it discharges the old contract. This is what we call as alteration of a contract. For example, let us say there is a loan taken for 10,000 rupees at, let us say, 15% rate of interest. The parties probably wanted to reduce the rate of interest to 14%, say 13%. Mutually they can agree, so that 15% agreement will not be discharged, and in its place whatever new interest they have agreed upon shall come into the picture. So, this is what we call as alteration. Another method is remission. Now, what is remission? Remission is basically accepting a lesser amount of promise made by the promisor. This word is referred to as remission, where there is a remission. Students are very familiar with the term remission. There is a remission in fee. The colleges say that there is a remission in fee. It means accepting lesser amount of promise. For example, let us say there is a debt of about 50,000 rupees between A and B. Now, when B expresses his inability to pay the 50,000, A may accept to take a lesser amount as full and final settlement for that payment. So, he is accepting for a lesser amount of promise than actually has been agreed upon between them, which is 50,000 rupees. So, this contract, this type of a discharge where the original contract is discharged and in its place the promisor is accepting a lesser amount of promise is what is referred to as remission. The last method is what is known as waiver. Now, this word also, students, as the word itself is self-explanatory, or waiving off. Now, what are we waiving off? We are waiving off means, in the sense, it is abandonment or relinquishment of a right that a party has in a contract. So, parties can either waive a particular part. For example, let us say there are a combination of promises made. So, the promisee can waive a part of it, saying that he is accepting that without that part of the contract, or abandoning a particular right, one part of the right of the contract. They can still go ahead with the contract, but the original contract they have entered into would have been discharged. So, this is the last method, which is known as waiver.
Okay. So, madam has beautifully explained the different types in the ways in which a contract is discharged. Contract is discharged by novation, by alteration, by rescission, by remission and by waiver. Now, but there seems to be a very slight difference between these different ways in which a contract is discharged. Srinivas sir, so in very clear and very explicit terms, please tell us this thin line of difference between these different types of discharge, and also I would like to specifically ask you, how is a contract discharged by lapse of time and also by operation of law? First tell us about the thin differences between novation, alteration and all, and then please also tell us about how a contract is discharged by lapse of time and also by operation of law.
What is the novation? Novation is nothing but replacing new contract in place of original contract in between same party or between different parties.
Okay.
So, old contract is going to replace with the new contract in between same party or between different parties. That is what we call it as novation. Once the new contract took place, old contract is automatically discharged. Second method is rescission. Rescission means a cancellation, simple word. And before, for example, X ordered Y, supply 100
Srinivas
TVs.
sir, sorry to interrupt you, but
Please.
we have got a caller.
Yeah,
Hello.
yeah, please.
Okay, I think we will continue.
Yeah.
Sorry for the
It's
interruption.
okay. Rescission is nothing but a cancellation. What is a cancellation? X telephone to Y, supply 100 TVs by Monday evening 4 p.m. Monday 10 a.m. he changed his mind. He may telephone to the supplier, please cancel the order. This is called before delivery of the goods, you can cancel it. That's called rescission. Another one is, you may ask a question, waiver and rescission, both are cancellations only.
Yeah.
Waiver means abandonment, relinquishment of a right. Then how these two were different? Then both are cancellations only. Generally, we see in the newspaper also, farmers' loans were waived. Then why not rescission? I personally feel offer got cancelled, use the word rescission. Invitation to offer got cancelled, use the word waiver. For example, cricket match going on, because of the rain, match got wavered or abandoned. Because at a cricket counter, nothing but a cricket stadium counter, booking counter is opened. That is called invitation to offer, not an offer. So I personally give clarity like this,
Okay.
because student will try to understand very quickly what is the difference between rescission and waiver point
Waiver.
is concerned. Now my question is, my clarification going is, what is the difference between novation and alteration? Novation means replacing new contract in place of original contract in between the same party, between the different parties. Whereas alteration means just change in terms and conditions only. Parties are remain same, only terms and conditions are being changed. That is called alteration. Parties were remain same, X and Y, both the parties, terms and conditions were changing. On the other hand, novation means the contract is going to replace between same party or between different parties. For example, I have agreed with you, I will sell my car for 1 lakh, pay money, take the delivery, agreed. On the stipulated date, you said I can't buy, but my friend is willing to buy.
Okay.
I said yes sir. Now contract between both of us is going to replace between myself and other person. So total replacement of existing contract with another person. Alteration means only change in terms and conditions. Other one is discharge of contract by lapse of time. Every debt is having time period, nothing but as per the Limitation Act, the time limit is 3 years. Before lapse of the time, we have to claim the money. Otherwise, the debt is already lapsed. Legally, you can't claim. There are some contracts which you need to perform timely. We can say time is the essence of the contract. You have faced one interview, selected, received one appointment order. Give the joining report as on before 31st May evening 5 p.m. Time is essence of contract. Before lapse of the time, you have to go there, give the joining report. Otherwise, offer from company will automatically lapse. On account of festival, if I order the goods, goods need to be delivered before the festival, where I can encash the season. If the goods are delivered to me after the festival, no use. Thereby, time is essence of a contract. There are some contracts which you need to perform timely. On the other hand, discharge of contract by operation of law. There are best example: death of the person, insolvency of a person, insanity. At the time of contract, both the persons are sound mind. Later, one person may become unsound. The contract will automatically gets discharged by operation of law. So,
okay. So, that was the explanation given by Srinivas sir with regard to the various ways in which a contract is discharged by the different methods of discharge, and also we also know how is a contract discharged by a lapse of time and also by operation of law. Now, there are certain contracts which cannot be performed. Those contracts, the performance is impossible, and there are certain contracts where the performance becomes impossible due to some other eventuality, which is called supervening impossibility. Now, I'd like to ask Sushila madam to tell us about the supervening impossibility.
Supervening impossibility. As sir has just mentioned, we have two types of impossibilities. Impossibilities may arise initially at the time of performance of a contract. We call it as initial impossibility. Subsequently, something happens into the contract which the parties will not be able to render the contract. That is known as subsequent impossibility. Now, directly going to the subsequent or supervening impossibility, impossibility which arises subsequently, that is after entering into the contract by the parties, is what is known as supervening impossibility or subsequent impossibility. Now, I want the students to understand the difference between the initial impossibility and the supervening impossibility or subsequent impossibility. Now, when the parties, whether it is known to them or unknown to them at the time of entering of the contract itself, when there is some kind of impossibility to perform. Now, in such case, the contracts are void ab initio contracts, whereas in the case of subsequent impossibility, the contracts will be rendered void. Something happens into the contract which does not facilitate the parties to perform the contract. So, such contracts will be void contracts. So, legally one is void ab initio contract, other is referred to as a void contract. Now, in contracts which are supervening impossibility or where subsequently impossibility creeps into the contract, the first one happens when there is a destruction of the subject matter of the contract. Now, what is subject matter of the contract? The very purpose for which the parties enter into the contract is referred to as the subject matter of the contract. Now, when that subject matter itself is destroyed, the parties will not be in a position to perform whatever they have promised. For example, there is a musical concert which has been promised between the parties. A party has promised to come and perform consequent, let us say 5 or 6 musical concerts. Now, this person falling ill, not being able to perform the promise itself, the subject matter is singing, performance. Now, that itself, when it cannot be performed, the contract cannot be taking place. So, this is an example for impossibility which is creeping into the contract at a later stage. Therefore, we call it as subsequent impossibility. And also we are referring it to as a destruction of the subject matter, because the subject matter being the performance by the artist cannot be performed because of the artist falling sick. Another type of subsequent impossibility will be in the case of death or incapacity of a person to perform the contract. Death obviously puts an end to the contract as long as it is a personal service, if the nature is personal. Another important method is by change of law. Now, at the time of entering of the contract, there is a set of rules and regulations or the legal provisions based on which the parties would have entered into a contract. Subsequently, when there is a change in the law, whatever terms and contract that they have entered into would obviously, it is impossible for them to perform because legally the provisions have changed. So, this is change of law which is rendering the contract impossible. And the next method is by declaration of war. Whether there is a war-like situation or when there is a declaration of war between nations, contracts becomes very difficult to perform because legally you are not allowed to enter into a contract with an enemy nation. Therefore, whenever there is a declaration of a war, contracts automatically get discharged because of the subsequent impossibility. We are using the word subsequent impossibility because at the time of entering of the contract, the situation between the nations is all right. Therefore, it was a valid contract, and subsequently, because of declaration of the war, the contract is rendered invalid because of impossibility of performance of the contract. The next method is by non-existence of the state of things. Now, what do we mean by non-existent of a state of things? When parties enter into a contract, there are certain things which are in place based on which on that premises parties would have entered into a contract. Now, later what happens is such state of things may differ. For example, let us say there is a shipment which is promised between the parties that you are promising to ship goods from one country to another country, let us say using the Suez Canal. Now, as long as the canal is open for shipment of the goods, this contract or performance of the contract can be performed between the parties. Unfortunately, let us say for reasons beyond the control of both the parties, the Suez Canal is closed for shipment of the goods for a certain period of time. Now, in such case, it is beyond both the parties, they cannot now ship the goods. This is what is known as beyond the control of the party and state of things not remaining the same. So, at the time of entering of the contract, certain set of premises were there and those premises are no longer valid today. This is what is discussed under release of a contract.
Okay. So, that was impossibility of performance and supervening impossibility. Now, Srinivas sir, after the contract has been entered into, then subsequently it becomes impossible to be performed. This is called supervening impossibility. Now, what is the effect of this supervening impossibility?
Before we go, just a little overview. What is the initial impossibility? An agreement which is not possible to perform from the beginning. Right from inception, it is not possible to perform. Example, bring the moon onto the earth. If you walk 400 kilometers per hour, find a treasure with magic. These are all impossible. You are trying to perform means waste of time and money. These are called a contract which need not be performed. This is initial impossibility. Second one, subsequent impossibility. The term itself is self-explanatory. Subsequent means after the agreement. Initially, it is possible to perform because of the supervening impossibility. What are supervening impossibilities? Vis major. What is vis major? It is a Latin maxim. Vis major means acts of God. What are acts of God? Cyclone, tsunami, earthquake, eruption of volcanoes and all. What all agreements made between the parties are valid? Because of acts of God, the contract is become impossible. Example, a farmer agrees with a trader. Whatever the paddy I produce during this Kharif season, I will sell to you. Agreement is valid. But in the month of November or December, severe cyclone, the crop got damaged. Contract between both of them, subsequent impossibility. Then war between the countries. As long as both the countries are friendly countries, agreements between both of them is valid. If there is a war, contract is subsequent impossible. What were the consequences? First one, contract is void. Second, whatever may be the benefit we have given to the opposite party, that benefit can be claimed back.
Okay.
Restoration.
Restoration.
Whatever benefit I have given to the opposite. For example, I am in India, you are in UK. For import of certain goods, I have given advance of the rupees 50 crores. Before the delivery of goods, if the countries become alien countries, alien enemy countries, whatever advance I have paid, that money can be claimed back. And vice versa. In case if you have supplied the goods for me, I have to pay the money. That's called quantum merit. As much as you are merited, as much as you are earned out of the contract, that benefit should be given back. So these were the consequences of the subsequent impossibility. In English law, this is called doctrine of frustration. In English law, this is called doctrine of frustration. For this rule, there are three exceptions are there. One is difficult. A difficult to perform the contract is not a supervening impossibility. It is only difficult but not impossible. What is the difference between impossibility and difficulty? If you secure university rank in this semester, is it difficult or impossible? Or difficult.
Difficult.
If you secure 100% marks in all the papers, probably impossible. Not all the papers. Some papers you may secure 100% marks. Some papers you may get up to 95, 98, but not a 100%. All the papers. On the other hand, next one is commercial impossibility is not a supervening impossibility. What is commercial impossibility? After the contracts were made, if the prices are increased or decreased, it will not discharge the contract. Parties need to perform the contract as per the agreed terms. If I supply the goods as per the old terms, I may have little loss, or in this assignment, no loss, no gain, break even point probably, or in this assignment, I may incur little loss, but definitely I can perform. So, please do remember students, commercial impossibility is not a supervening impossibility. Parties are in a position to perform. Only thing is, if I supply, I will be at loss. And third one is strikes and lockouts is not a supervening impossibility. A strike is that employees right. Employees said we won't work all together. Strike is the powerful weapon in the hands of employee. Lockout is the powerful weapon in the hands of employer. There is a dispute between employer and employee. The problem since not solved. Employee said we go on the strike. When employees gave a notice for strike, employer may say I go for lockout. What is lockout? Temporary closure of the place of work. So strike and lockout means there is a dispute. The dispute can be solved or cannot be solved? Can be solved. Then how it is impossible? So do remember students, commercial impossibility is not a supervening impossibility. Strikes and lockouts are not a supervening impossibility. A difficult to perform the contract is not a supervening impossibility. This comes under breach of a contract and you can claim the damages from the opposite party. Yes.
So now you were talking about something called as breach of contract.
Yes.
So the contract, we have learnt about performance of contract and we know how a contract is discharged. What if the contract is not performed? When a contract is not performed, it is called as breach of contract. So Srinivas sir, what are the different remedies for breach of contract?
In case of a breach is nothing but non-fulfillment of condition by either of the party. There are two types of breaches are there, actual breach, anticipatory breach. What is actual breach? Non-fulfillment of condition by either of the party. I have agreed that I will supply the goods on the stipulated date or a appointed date, fail to supply, breach of contract. And other party fails to pay money after the delivery, breach of contract. Other one, anticipatory breach of contract. The section 39 speaks about anticipatory. In anticipation of the breach of the contract, one is communicating his inability to perform the contract is called anticipatory breach of contract. X agrees with Y, I will supply the 1000 TVs by tomorrow evening 6 p.m. By this time already supply 950 TVs. Easily can supply another 50 TVs I got under 1 day time. But today evening at 3 p.m. there is a breakdown of a machinery, power failure or accumulation of raw material, some unavoidable conditions were prevailed. Then next telephone to Y, remaining 50 TVs I can't supply because expecting breach of contract. In case of breach of contract, what are the remedies available to aggrieved party? The remedies, first one is suit for damages, suit for injunction, suit for specific performance, suit for the quantum merit and suit for rescission. First one is suit for damages. How many damages are there? Ordinary damages, liquidated damages, vindictive, punitive or exemplary damages, and other one nominal damages. Students remember, remote damages cannot be claimed as a matter of right. Out of all the damages, which damage a person cannot claim is remote damages. And what is ordinary damage? It is the difference between market price and contract price. These damages are estimated after the breach of contract. Both the parties are having no knowledge about damages. And friends, dear students, these are the various remedies available for breach of a contract.
So dear students, this was the lesson on performance and remedies for breach of contract. I hope this lesson was very useful to you, and I thank the experts for coming over here and explaining this concept to our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.